Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Isaac from Guns for Everyone. Another topic today, going along with my goal of bringing more of the class content into the videos for people who have been to our classes to refresh the material, or in some cases, or in a lot of cases, the class goes the way the class goes, and we don't talk about the same thing in all of our classes. And sometimes you come to our class, and we might go down a rabbit hole around lawful self-defense, and we might go into a rabbit hole around training or tactics or things like that. Today, we are going to talk about the concept of efficiently stopping threats with bullets and addressing one of the questions that comes up, I'd say, pretty regularly in the concealed carry classes, and that is the way it's commonly asked is, do you shoot to kill? What if I don't want to kill them? I shoot them in the leg, etc. And this question seems pretty intuitive to some people in the gun world, but then what happens is you go and look at comments on YouTube videos and news stories, and you realize that most people out there, whether or not they're gun people, just generally speaking, most people out there don't really understand the goal of using a gun against another person. Now, in actual self-defense encounters, what I'm about to tell you actually is, generally speaking, the way it goes. There is a natural inclination, I think, when it comes to fighting, that you understand that you fight until you don't have to fight anymore, and you fight effectively to make the fight stop as quickly as possible. Now, some people are good at that, and some people are bad at that. But I want to address the issue to help people better understand the way we approach this. So, up on the board here, I've talked about this in other videos. This is our efficiency and consistency Venn diagram, and I'm just going to quickly run through it. We want to be effective in the context of defensive shooting. We want to be effective, and effective in defensive shooting is that it stopped the threatening behavior. That is our definition of effective. We don't want to just be effective, though. We want to be efficient. So that means in the least amount of time and resources that we are effective. So if I'm going to shoot the bad guy to stop the behavior, then I want to do it in a way that is going to happen quickly. Stop the threat quickly. And I also want to be consistent. And that means efficient would be one round to stop the threat. Consistent would be that the threat was stopped before they harmed anybody else or continue to harm anybody else. So it's difficult for us to apply this principle without understanding some more things about bad guys, about guns, etc. So let's talk about our definition of stopping the threat or stopping the threatening behavior, because that's the real crux of the issue. Is we want to stop the threatening behavior. And there's two types of stops. Oh, that marker is toast. Let's find another one. All right. There's two types of stops. There is the psychological and the physiological. All right, so the psychological stop is where you change their mind about continuing the fight. Psychological stop can happen with merely the presentation of a gun. So I'm accessing my gun in order to use it, but in the process of doing that, the attacker has decided that they don't want to continue the fight and no shots are fired. That could also be that you shot them 15 times and they are going to die, but that doesn't mean that they've stopped quite yet. It was the 16th round that actually changed their mind and they started running away. Now, they might die a half a block away. They may die in the hospital. Death is the outcome ultimately for the threat, but in the moment it was a psychological stop because they decided to stop. Lots of stories like this. I was listening to a gentleman on a podcast. I can't remember which podcast it was, and he was talking about how he shot a threat twice in the chest, and that attacker went on to jump out of a window and run and get in his car and drive away, and then died like at the end of the parking lot or something like that. Bled to death. But psychological stop. A physiological stop is where you impair their physical abilities to the point where they can't continue the fight. And that typically happens with blood loss, lowering their blood pressure by putting holes in the circulatory system. So you put holes in the heart, in the major blood vessels, in the lungs, where there are some areas of the lungs that are very rich in blood vessels. And you've got the spine, which maybe might not result in death, but a shock to the spinal cord often will stop behavior instantly. You have the central nervous system, so if we damage that system enough, and that shuts off their ability. And sometimes there will be a shot to like a structural part of the body, like a pelvis, and breaking the pelvis to the point where the person cannot stand anymore. Excuse me. Just because they can't stand doesn't mean they can't be dangerous. But if you're talking about somebody who has like an impact weapon or a knife or something, and you knock them down because you broke their pelvis and they can't stand up, then generally speaking, that person is physiologically stopped, even though death may or may not be part of the outcome. Oftentimes, with blood loss, death is part of the outcome, because if they're bleeding to the point where they lose consciousness or, lose consciousness, they're probably not going to get help fast enough to save their life. So, all that to say, these are the two types of stops when it comes to stopping an attack. Now, the data shows, John Lott's data would be one chunk of data to look at for this. Video evidence certainly supports this. The data shows that the vast majority of stops are psychological stops. And that very well could be because attackers, generally speaking, do not want to engage in a fair fight. They probably picked their victim because they thought that there would not be a gun involved. You got cases where people break into houses and they didn't expect anybody to be home, and then that person gets shot at, and that's probably not part of their plan. And lots and lots of ways that psychological stops become the norm in self-defense shootings. But if it is not a psychological stop, then it must be, if you're going to stop the behavior, it must become a physiological stop. So, to be efficient and consistent, where do you shoot into the body in order to prepare and act as if a physiological stop is going to be necessary? So I've got the target here, and let's put this up. So this area right here, we call this the high center chest. A lot of people say center mass. Center mass, to be technically correct on a human being, is just above the belly button, a little bit lower for a female. High center chest. If we're going to teach ourselves to think and to act, we should use the right words. And high center chest is the right set of words. High center chest. If you notice, you take a regular adult size hand and spread it out and place it over the high center chest. That is about the area. Okay. If you were to do this on your body, you just take that hand and open it up and put it right below the collarbone. Okay. The very bottom of the trachea is right here. Obviously, the lungs and the heart are within this area. The spine is within this area. The biggest blood vessels in the body are within this area. So you have an area of the body that is most likely going to cause the kind of significant damage that we're looking for from a handgun bullet. And handgun bullets are very dangerous, but they're not nearly as dangerous as a rifle or a shotgun. Rifle bullets, generally speaking, tend to poke holes in the human body, not devastate or destroy structures or organs. Or organs, not organs. All right, so in the name of being consistent and efficient, the primary target in most cases is going to be the high center chest of your attacker. Now, it doesn't always look like this, because if I'm coming at you and I raise my arm like this, the high center chest profile has just changed. I'm not facing you anymore. It has changed. So it helps us if we, as we get more into this, if we better understand the high center chest as a 3D environment. Sage Dynamics, Aaron Cowan has done some really good work on this, and I encourage you to go check out his videos on anatomy. to better understand that and what a target looks like. But in the basic training environment, we are going to focus on the high center chest, basically below the collarbone and about a hand's width breadth apart from there, so between the nipples. If you were to change that target profile, we'd still be going for about the same level. Our target might get a little bit smaller as we turn the profile, but we're still looking to put rounds into this high center chest, an area that's likely to cause significant blood loss, central nervous system damage, probably not structural damage to the point where they can't fight anymore unless you hit the spine and cause that temporary paralysis. But in the name of efficiency and consistency, this is our target. How many times do you shoot? Well, you shoot until you don't need to shoot anymore. What does that mean? Well, if you've changed the behavior enough that you don't need to continue to fire, then you stop firing. Why do you do that? A lot of times people will make the connection, well, for legal reasons, you don't want to overkill the target. We've talked about this a lot. We don't train for the law. Yes, it is a factor if the prosecutor can make you look like you shot too many times, but that can happen with one shot and it can happen with you empty the magazine. The reason why we don't empty the magazine into the threat is I do have a limited amount of ammo. It's not a movie, it's not a video game. I have a limited amount of ammo, and if I waste ammo that I might need for something else, then I am not being efficient and I'm not being consistent. So or you know, we could say consistent because you could do it wrong all the time. Every single time you shoot at the target, you could mag dump. That would be consistent, but not efficient. It would be a waste of resources. So our target is the high center chest in most cases. In some cases, a more precise shot may be required to the head, although the head is a difficult target to be as effective against. It's smaller, it's better protected in some ways. It's better protected than the high center chest is by the bone structure, and so usually high center chest. The good news is that we tend to intuitively focus on the upper part of the body when we're defending. And if we are using the handgun in a kinesthetic way, aligning our body and our head with the gun and extending it out and looking at the threat, your body is probably going to intuitively align the gun with this area. So the upshot of that is self-defense encounters. Often the bad guy is shot up above, let's say at least above the waist, generally speaking, and into an area that is critical. Training around that is, I want to be efficient at that. I want to make sure I can handle the gun and handle firearms safely and use the gun safely in the middle of doing something like this. Teaching my brain how to recognize problems and solve those problems, and then my body follows. There's a bunch of reasons why training is important in this context. So, would I ever shoot at a leg? Well, if it's all I had to shoot at and I felt like I needed to shoot, absolutely I'd shoot at a leg. But generally speaking, that's not going to be the case. Generally, you will have more of the bad guy to shoot. You'll have something representing this, and you'll be able to utilize that to efficiently stop the threatening behavior. It's important that we are careful with our words, just like I said before, high center chest. You'll never hear me purposely, sometimes accidentally, but purposely, you'll never hear me purposely say stop the threat. Because that threat, you're calling that person a threat. And their threat, the fact that they are not a threat is based on their behavior, not them as a person. So if they come at me with a gun and they shoot at me and I shoot back and they drop the gun and run away, they are not a threat anymore. They are a person who threatened me or who threatened somebody else. And it's the behavior that we need to stop, not the person. If we train our brains that the person must be stopped, then we are training ourselves to do things like pursuing threats when we don't need to pursue them, continuing to shoot into threatening or into that threatening person when we don't need to continue to shoot into that threatening person. So it's important that we understand we're stopping the threatening behavior, and we're trying to do it efficiently and consistently by putting holes in areas that are likely to significantly change that person's ability to fight. Recognizing that more than likely, as I begin to use the gun will change that person's behavior psychologically before it will physiologically. So There's a lot more that could go into this, but I want to try to keep this video on the shorter side. We're at 15 minutes. Hopefully that makes sense. I'd love to hear your comments, questions, experiences, things you've heard from other people, things that you have come to realize through your own training and education. Whatever you want, put it in the comments. Let's talk about it. If you're interested in our training classes, we do shooting classes, we do free concealed carry classes. Our classes are all on our website, gunsforeveryone.com. And yeah, that's it. That's all. Man, I don't know. I got the hiccups today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Peace out.